Today we're talking about going back, taking a look at photographs from years gone by and seeing them in a new light. This is the Great Outdoors Photography Podcast, episode 150 for August 10, 2022. Hello and welcome to the Great Outdoors Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Bergherm, and I am here to help you pursue your photographic purpose in the great outdoors. For those that have been here for a while, thank you so much. I love having you here. It's been a great ride, and we're just going to continue going on with some great content as we look forward to the future. I really do appreciate it. Please do reach out via the Facebook group or email if you'd like, if you got any feedback or suggestions or anything like that. And for all you new listeners out there, welcome. It's great to have you here. Be sure to hit that follow button in your podcast app so you don't miss a single episode and all the good things that we have going on here at the Great Outdoors Photography Podcast. If you would like to email me, just head on to your email app and type in Brent at thegreatoutdoorsphotographypodcast.com, and that'll go right to me. All right, today I am joined by Bree Stockwell. Bree, welcome to the show.
So great to be back chatting with you, Brent.
Yes, it's wonderful. I'm so glad. It has been a little bit of a while since we've last talked, but you've been making a few comments or posts or whatever on Facebook and Instagram about this notion of just kind of taking a look at some images, you know, from years gone by or months gone by or weeks, whatever, where you revisit some images and reprocess them. And I was like, you know what, that would make a great topic. I just want to talk about that. So I'm thrilled that that will be at least our starting point. We might end up, I'm sure we'll end up in other areas too. Any conversation with Bree is a fantastic conversation. So Bree, I'm glad you're here, and let's get started with just a brief little catch up, what you've been up to and how things are going over there on your side of the world.
What have I been up to? You mean, what have I been getting into trouble doing?
What have you been getting into trouble with? Sure, we can do that.
Okay, so a couple of things. One is you're throwing me for a loop. I have to talk about myself now. I know, right? Well, what's funny is I was thinking about this lately. I don't know, for those of you who don't know, I am actually a life coach for creative. I'm calling myself a creative coach. I can call myself whatever I want. But
sure.
When I started on this big photography journey back in 2020, which is kind of when I came to you, right? And that's kind of how we met. Yeah. And it was just photography only. I was working on this big, huge, impossible goal. And it kind of led me down a path that I never even thought, I could never even imagine. I just think it's interesting when we put ourselves out there to do new things, where it takes us in life. And so because of all that, I decided to go do a coaching certification, and it took me 6 months or something. But now I am fully into combining my creativity and creative work and my coaching and figuring out how that all goes together. And it's really, really fun. So when most people are traveling this summer, I've just been hanging out at home and looking at old images like we talked about, but also, really figuring out this part. And I got some exciting stuff, but I'll tell you at the end.
All right.
Very good. So I think that's going straight into if you don't mind, looking back at images. I think summertime, or whenever we have these longer periods of time when we kind of know we're not going to be able to go out and do photography. For sure, we can go do photography in our backyards or wherever. But if we know we're going to have a lull, I just think this is a great time to go back and go, hey, where have I been? And where do I want to go now?
Absolutely. So it could be an inspiration to just get out there again.
Yeah.
Revisiting those memories, for sure. That would be a great reason for me to go back into my library and just say, I had such a great time wherever that location was, whatever that situation was. And that can spur the energy to say, okay, let's go create more of those memories. Let's go create more of those awesome images that we just love making. And it is that so yeah, if we were to put down a list, and just so everyone knows, we literally did not.
We don't have a plan.
Come up with any type of bullet list or anything
Y'all,
like that.
we don't have
We're
a
just
plan.
like, hey, let's just talk about this and see where it goes, because certainly just revisiting and saying, hey, it's time to go again. Certainly, that's a good idea.
Yeah, but
I think a lot of photographers would probably use wintertime as that type of time frame as well, because a lot of folks don't like going out to shoot in the wintertime.
Right, but some people love it, right? So you just have to figure out what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like me. I love shooting in the winter. Absolutely.
I freeze, but I also like it too. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But I also think, maybe this is a little bit of my coaching brain popping in here, but I also think like when we go back to look at our stuff and we're thinking like, oh, how great that was and how we're looking forward to in the future. I also think it's important to check with yourself and go, oh, am I like, is there some sort of, because I think doing this can also bring up some negative feelings. Like I'm not able to go right now. Like if you have something physical going on, or something, maybe there's some place you want to go that costs a lot of money to get to. Yeah. That, I mean, look, let's be honest about our world right now. But if that's kind of a barrier, then I can see how going backwards to look at your stuff can bring up all of those. And having that in mind when you do go backwards, I also think is important to just know that it could happen and just like being aware of it, right? Don't let that stop you from going back and enjoying, right? But let's just be aware that could pop up and it's going to be okay. But you can literally just reroute yourself and go, okay, but I can put a pause on that thinking right now and just come and enjoy my stuff.
Yeah, what I find can be helpful is, and I know I've said this type of thing in the past, but literally just writing something down. If I've got something that I know I need to solve, or I need to brood over, or I need to whatever, if I just write it down, the brain knows that it's tucked away safe over there. It can always come back to it, and then I don't persist on that thing. And then you can kind of open yourself up to just enjoy whatever you got going on in the past. You mentioned kind of the state of the world. If I go back, and I've actually done this in my mind, but not literally in Lightroom yet. If I go back to my images from Hong Kong and I look at the awesome stuff that I did there in 2018, so that was a while ago, and I know I'm just going to get depressed because there's no way I'm going to go to Hong Kong for probably another 10 years, because if ever, because they've gone so, I'm trying to edit on the fly here my words. They've gone so crazy with various restrictions and all their things. And I just plumb don't agree with it. I don't like what's happened there. I don't like what's happened to the territory. It is such a beautiful place. And I'm talking especially beyond the concrete jungle. And so I guess to me, it becomes more of a journey. It would likely become more of a journey that says, this was such a wonderful location. Let's look and celebrate. Let's be happy for what it was. Let's be happy that I had that opportunity for sure. And if I were to redevelop, or if I were to reapproach the processing of those images, I bet you there would probably be some differences coming through. And now I'm starting to think, why would there be differences? Is it just my vision that's changed, or is it my opinion about the location that's going to affect those things? My altered opinion about the location. There's just lots of different reasons for why I might process something differently.
Ultimately, hopefully you're not the same person as you were in 2018, well, sure. Right? And so all of those things that you just said contribute to changing who we are as a person. And of course you would process differently. At least I think so. And actually I would hope you would, right? And by the way, I love Hong Kong too. And I don't know. I've looked at some of my old stuff. I'm like, oh, I don't know when I'll be back there either. I have to look and see when I was there. Yeah. It might have been 2018 too. It was a good year.
It was a good year. I was there in August, and it was, August Hong Kong is very hot.
November. It was November for sure for me.
You were there in November. That would, I'm sure, be a lot better. But yeah, that's all right. But no, with the idea of, hopefully we've grown. Hopefully we have come to some kind of process or some kind of realization that, if you were to look at it with new eyes and then you process it all over again, I guess what would I do? Would I start from the current processing, or would I clear out the processing changes that Lightroom has and start from scratch? I guess I would have to start, I would have to look at both ways of processing it. But then when you're done with it, of course, comparing with what you did initially, and then being able to see, is this what I ultimately want this image to be? Do I like what I did before? Do I like what I did now? And I would say, actually, this is part of my process anyway for almost any image that I shoot, especially if I'm going to take it to print. And that is, I'll process it. I'll then sit on it for like 30 days. I'll then revisit it. So it's not a good long time, but 30 days is something, it just lets it kind of sort of percolate and simmer in the background. And then I can revisit it. And since those memories and those experiences are not as fresh, I do see it with a different set of eyes. And then I can make those subtle, they're usually very subtle manipulations that I want to make in order to really just make that image really solid. So there's, I guess, two different ways of looking at it too. Do you do it as a part of your normal process, or here what we're talking about really is something that you've already bottled up, something that you've already kind of put the stamp of approval on. Oh, but now let's crack that back open and see what happens.
Brent, I've been doing something a little bit different for sure. I like to go backwards and go, oh, I wonder if I do this, after a while. What I've been doing is I said, okay, and this all kind of, I'm kind of glad I talked about being like a new photographer in 2020, because I was like, okay, it's 2022. As of now, I've been doing this for 2.5 years. It feels like a long time, but it's really not at all. And if I go back to the very beginning of my work, and part of the goal for me in doing this exercise, I'm not done yet, by the way, just because I have a lot of images. Because at the beginning, I think I make less images when I'm out now, because at the beginning I was like, oh, I gotta get, like I was always like,
everything.
I know. Well, it's not even everything. It was like, am I gonna get it right? Like, I have to take like 20 of this one, and then I'm looking at it now, going, which is the one that's like good or sharp or whatever, and probably none of them are, but whatever. So, but what I was doing is I don't know, months ago, I was like, you know what? I want to understand more about who I am as a photographer and what my personal creative vision is, and not to put myself in a box or to like pigeonhole myself, but I wanted to increase my personal, or what I felt my personal successfulness was when I was A, editing, and B, out in the field. And so I was like, okay, what? So I'm literally going down all of my stuff in my Lightroom catalog from day one. And I'm just using my gut instincts and going, I like that one. And it goes in a collection. I like that one, goes in a collection. Right. I like that one, goes in a collection. And it's not even like, oh, if I do I don't know, then it doesn't go, right? If it's like, I like that one, it goes in the collection.
Good.
And then as I'm doing this, I'm starting to discover some themes, and that it's really helping me understand who I am better. And I suspect as I move forward and continue to do that, then I'll understand even more. So that when I'm out so that when I'm like looking, so what this is doing, this is really interesting, is it's doing a couple things. One is when I'm in the editing process of a current image, like a ton of trees or something, I'm like, oh, this is a big mess. Oh, wait, I'm noticing in my stuff that I like really, I gravitate towards the simplicity. So what if I change this now to black and white? Oh, maybe that helps it narrow things down. And it's kind of helping me, not that I have to do that, but it's helping me go, oh, okay, now I know I gravitate towards the more simple. What can I do to simplify this? Like, I like the structure of it and all that stuff. Like, what can I do to simplify? And maybe it's not making it black and white. Maybe it's doing something else. Maybe I don't even work on it at all. But just knowing that is super helpful for me in like the editing process. Have you found that for yourself?
That is huge, because what you're doing there is you're continuing to refine your vision and your purpose for why you even shoot and do the work that you do. And this is a perfect example of not only just the value of revisiting images, but how it comes full circle, I guess. And that is, okay, you go out there, because what you're going to probably do, and this will morph over time for sure. It will be subtle. I'm not suggesting it's going to be just bang and this is all different or things like that. No, this is intended to be subtle. And you're going to come to the point where when you're out there shooting, you're going to start seeing these types of things just all of a sudden fall into place. Sometimes I bet for you it happens more quickly. And sometimes it's just like, I still got no idea. But it becomes a little more part of the process of predictability of your realizing your vision, all those types of things, because you're going back and you're saying, hey, this is where I was. Here's the things that I'm carrying forward to today. Because like you said, you're going through and you're like, that one speaks to me. That one also speaks to me. Not that one so much, but this one speaks to me. So you're starting to find this thread that draws these connections from your images back then to your image making now. And I think that's very exciting. I love to see that kind of and experience that kind of thing in my own work. And I love to see it happen in someone else, because what you're really doing is you're just making it even tighter as it relates to your purpose for being out there making these images.
And I think I'm loving seeing this process. And like I said, it's not to like pigeonhole myself. Like, I'm not going to go, okay, when I go out, I have to do this kind of thing, or I have to go to this kind of place. I have to, I have to X, Y, Z or whatever, but it really is helping me when I'm in the field go, okay, this is really chaotic. How can I make this more minimal? Or how can I, and this is maybe a good skill in general, how can I condense this image down just to the thing I'm interested, to just the thing I'm interested? Absolutely.
I think that is going to be one of those things of composition that everyone is going to be able to, for themselves, realize here's the value. And that is, again, tightening your vision and really making it, I don't know if I want to say the word obvious, but making it strong, enhancing the strength of your composition. That's what it's really going to do for you. Because once you're clear, I mean, I've got people all the time, they'll come and say, hey, I've got this image, they'll might be asking me, what do you think of it? Or how can I make it stronger? Whatever. Certainly the first question I want to ask is, what was important to you in making this image? And if they can't answer that, then I know we've got a problem. But if they can answer that, then I can usually just say, hey, here's what you got to do then. Here's how you help elevate that point and purpose. And if you don't go back and look at what you've done and potentially even reprocess. But if you don't go back at least and look at what you've done and revisit, that whole notion of being confident in what you're doing next time you go out shooting is still going to be potentially a little bit lackluster. You're going to increase your confidence. You're going to increase your hit rate as it relates to what you keep and all the good stuff. So certainly there's many positives to how this all works. And I love what you said about just when you're out in the field, it just helps you boil it. I don't know if you use the term boil it down, but that's the term I use. Boil it down to its essence.
Distill.
Yeah.
Or even just asking what is this? What specifically am I drawn to here? And I think, that I'm practicing doing that currently because I've gone back and when I look at the images that I like, I go, what is it exactly that I like about this? And I'm able to answer that more and more and more. And so then I can more easily do that when I'm out. And I love that. What do I like about this? What is this all about? Write this down. We should make a list. We should make a PDF for this episode. Right? What?
I imagine when I'm editing, I'll probably be taking a few notes so I can have a nice list and it'll go on the show notes.
Right. That sounds great. Yeah. I want to make a PDF of this. Because I think asking those kind of questions is really helpful because sometimes we're out and we're like, oh, I love this. I'm drawn to this. And we're not even thinking this out loud. This is just some chatter that's running through our head. You know what I mean? And we're not being aware of the question so that we can't actually ask this. So if we're out and we can ask these things, and also take ourselves to places that will give us better chances of getting those things like what I love, or making images of what we love. So then that'll be really helpful. I love getting myself to the dunes at White Sands and planning that again because I know I want to, I can go there. I've got multiple projects going for it. And, you know what I mean? And I know that it's a place that I can go, and everywhere I go, it's something that not everywhere, but because I love it so much, then it's easier for me to distill that down. Yeah. So speaking of White Sands, I also want to talk about and I think you talked about re-editing work.
Yeah.
So I haven't done this yet, but there's an image that I have, and this is maybe a good time to go back through your work and go, what do I you talked about, kind of how you change and grow over time. I also think it's fun to figure out how to play with your work. And I think this helps you grow in the future and this is what I'm going to do. I just had this idea a week ago and I haven't had a chance to really go do it or really execute it. So there's one image I love. I mean, I love a lot of my images now versus when I first started. But there's one particular image. And I want to try and I was chatting with someone recently and she's like, take that image and process it in so many different ways. You're going to learn a lot. Yeah. And I'm like, ooh, I wonder what happens if I make this one black and white. I wonder what happens. It's kind of a little darker. I wonder what happens if I make it higher key. I wonder, and so I'm like, oh, I want to go back and do this and just see how some different editing can really influence my work going forward as I play with some of my older stuff. And I really think that's more about play, right? Absolutely.
I did that one time. I possibly have done that a couple of times. Yeah. But the time I'm thinking of that I'll put in the show notes website and on the Facebook group, there was a lighthouse that I had photographed on the Oregon coast, and it had this nice spiral staircase going on up on the interior of the lighthouse. And so I got a nice low angle and just did some of the staircase. I didn't get the whole thing spiraling. I mean, I did, but not the image that I'm talking about. And so I looked at this and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do kind of an Andy Warhol type thing where I'm going to play with it and I'm going to see what happens. And so one is distinctly very purple and the other one is very this other color and this other thing and this whatever. And then I actually kind of just positioned it together. So do 1, 2, 3, 4. And I was just kind of like, yeah, that's kind of cool. You know, it just gives a different approach, a different feel, a different interpretation on the subject. And I don't know that, since that's not my normal genre for sure of what I want to produce or what I want to be known as producing, it's just not something, I guess, that I put out there a whole lot, but it's one of those internal things to play. Like you kind of said there, it's just about playing with it. And there's definitely, I'm going to say there's huge value in that. And I just love that idea. And I'm trying to think, is there something else I wouldn't mind playing with? Actually, another set of images I tend to play with a lot. And I'm going to be talking about this in a future episode because a listener asked about an episode about processing fog images. When I'm processing fog images, I play a lot because there's just so many different ways you can interpret that fog and that foggy scene, that cloudy scene, whatever it is. And when you have that, when you're going crazy this way or that way, you really start to learn how you can push the image. You can start to learn what your vision is about in this different genre that you don't probably shoot a whole lot, possibly. And then you just start to settle on something. But it's going to be interesting when I go back and revisit some of those fog images. You know, I'm going to be thinking about our conversation now because it's kind of like, okay, how would I process this differently? How might I do that? And certainly I'll be talking about that in a future episode. It'll probably come out sometime in September or October here in 2022.
It's interesting. So the friend of mine that suggested it, because I had said, I'm thinking about doing this, and she said, do 10 iterations of it.
Yeah.
And you could do multiple exposures, like, you know, and not that here's the thing. It's kind of like a homework assignment, right? Like you may never show any of this to anyone, but you may come out and go, oh my goodness, that was something that I didn't realize, but I actually really love. And in the doing of it, think about how much you learn as you play. Like if you want to get better, if you want to, I say better, but if you want to hone your editing skills, do something like this. Think of an idea, start messing around, start pressing the buttons. And what the great thing is like, who cares? It doesn't count for anything. You're not submitting this to some, you know, competition or whatever. No one has to see any of this. Is just for you. And you can just literally play around and you'll get used to some of the other things. So anyway, I may do that with this image.
That's great.
Right?
And unless you're on a 10 or more year old computer, you're not going to break Lightroom. And that's okay.
You run out of disk space.
Yeah, run out of disk space, processing, whatever. But, you know, when you say, you know, your friend tells you doing it 10 times, I like that in that it kind of sounds like one of my assignments that my students at the university will look at me just like, this is so useless. And I'll be like, just do it, because the process, as I've said before, the process makes it possible. You have to learn the process. You have to see what's possible. You have to see what's even capable of happening. And until you can see that, until you can experience that, it's just, you know, you just don't know. And so get out there, play with it, and see what can be happening. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's also like pushing yourself too. So when I think about this one image, you know, it's sand dunes. There's backlit sand blowing, and when I think about how I would want to re-edit it, I'm like, I can think of 3 ways. But what if I pushed myself and did 10? And it's going to feel like a little uncomfortable. And maybe by the time I get to like 8, 9, 10, I'm really going to be struggling to think of how to do it. But as you push yourself, like, look, I love saying this. you're not changing if you're all comfortable with your one-time editing. So sometimes as we push ourselves to do this work, it's like, oh, this kind of feels like a stretch for me. I don't know. But as we push ourselves, then that is actually how we grow. And so going backwards and looking at our stuff and going, like all of this can bring up some really interesting like emotions as we do all this. Like I found myself judging my early work. I judge my current work too. And as we all do, right? I'm assuming we all do. Is there anybody out there that doesn't look at their stuff and doesn't make a judgment about it? I mean, this is how we make decisions, right? So, but going backwards, going backwards and like having some judgment, but also seeing where I've done well. Like this going backwards process too is like, how am I doing well? Like I'm surprised, Brent, at the work that like, especially from White Sands, because it was a place that I felt drawn to. It was a place that felt really comfortable. It was like super inspiring for me. And I'm surprised, not even 6 months in, making there are some images I'm like, wow, I really love that. I think that's good. I can't believe I did that in my first 6 months. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so going back and seeing also where we did well versus like criticizing ourselves can be also a really good activity, a reason why you would want to go back and go, okay, I'm just going to see all the times where I've done well. And I suspect all of those reasons, where the ones you've drawn to, the ones you like, where you've done well, it's all going to inform how, the photographer you are right now. So good.
Yes. Very, very cool. So are there other benefits or other ways or reasons or whatever? What else can we unpack with this idea of revisiting our past images? I feel that we've got a pretty good, solid idea kind of out there already, but maybe there's some other things that you're thinking about.
I think I just gave them all, but hang on.
All right.
Hang on a second.
Right.
I'm thinking about it. Well,
while you think about it, I'm gonna ask the listeners to go ahead and chime in either on email or in the Facebook group when we make this post on this episode. Let us know what your thoughts are on how it is that you revisit and why you revisit your images. And especially if this is like something you've never thought about doing and you're inspired to do it. And tell us what you thought. Tell us what you learned. Tell us what your experience was. I would love to know what that is, and maybe we can just have a brief recap where I'll go over a couple of those reactions from you as listeners, because I think it'd be great to have a little more input on this, because certainly each of us are going to have a unique perspective on this, and I'd love to hear some more. So as you come up with some ideas, get in the email or on the Facebook group. And it looks like you had something else there, Bree.
Is going. Okay, so one of the other things that I was discovering is as I look backwards and I look through my work, and I don't know about you, but I'll go, okay, hey, today I'll just sometimes pull up. Listen, I'm not doing this. I originally thought I was going to do it chronologically, and that's great. But look, I'm a creative. I don't do stuff that way.
We're all over the place.
I know. I mean, I could make a check. Okay. So in reality, I could go list all of my like folders and stuff. And maybe that's what I should do, is make a big list and then check off the ones that I do, because it's not going chronologically, because I open up my Lightroom and I'm like, what do I want to look at today? So, and then I'll just pick, and it depends on how much time I have. If it's a smaller folder, and I don't have much time, then I'll go through that one. So in doing this, I'm also starting to think of, and this is the interesting thing, is this is going to look different for everyone because as you go back and you peruse your past work, you're going to come up with like new questions for yourself. So the things that I'm asking myself are for me, and maybe you want to ask them too, but also you're going to start to have new ideas too about your own stuff. So here's what happened. What happened for me is I was like, well, look at all of these. I noticed from Death Valley that I had a whole bunch of like textures. I'm super drawn to little textures and all over the place, but sometimes those don't make really interesting standalone images. So
sure.
I mean, they can for sure. But I was like, if I could play with these, how would I play with them? And I've been wanting, I'm a knitter. I like making stuff. I like making stuff with my hands. And so sometimes the digitalness of the photography, like I don't know that I'll ever do film, but sometimes the digitalness feels a little bit disconnecting. So that's why I love printing. Like you mentioned printing and our little like, hey, we could talk of these are the things that we could talk about. But here's how these two mesh together, Brent.
Perfect. Yes, give it to me.
So I was like looking at all these textures and going, how could I play with this even more? Like, how could I play with these? And so here's what I did. I printed up 7 different, well, I printed up more than this, but I used 7 different texture images. And I just started like lining them up and tearing them. And I created like this new piece of work. Can you see this? Can you see this? Hang on a second. I got to pull up my...
I can see that.
Okay. So I took all of these like texture images because I like making this, I like doing this stuff at like blue hour or twilight when everything's really purple or pink or whatever, or like super like just interesting. This Death Valley is crazy for this stuff, right? So I was like, how can I play with this? So when I printed it, I started tearing, and now I have this piece of work, and then I took a picture of it, right? Like I used my camera to make an image of it. And now I have this piece of art that's like this torn paper. I mean, I have the original, but it's like this torn paper art. And this never would have been a thing if I hadn't have gone back to do this stuff, to go look through stuff and then just have the open mind to be really curious about what I'm interested in and then start thinking about how I can play with it even more. I mean, how fun is that? Look, there's the racetrack.
That's amazing.
Right? Isn't it so? It's fun.
So what we have, make sure you please send me that. I can post it
I'll send you this
in the Facebook group and in the website. But
wait, Brent,
basically what this is, it's a collage.
I'll explain it. Yeah, this is a torn paper collage. It's 8.5 by, well, the image is 8 by 10, and I have different textures torn. I mean, it's in a 8 by 10 ratio, like 4 by 5, right? And they're just torn, stacked on top of each other. So it is a collage, and I'll explain the bottom. When you look at it, the bottom is like the salt basin. I won't tell you where it is. somewhere in the basin. And
somewhere in the basin.
Right. And then the next one is the racetrack, which is where those rocks move. If you look up the racetrack for Death Valley, the next one is just a wall of a canyon that I really enjoyed, like these interesting rocks forming together. The next one up is they're like mud cracks, but it's photographed in like semi-early morning. So they're blue. Like it's the dirt, but it's blue. It's reflecting blue. Nice. The next one is also dirt, but they're in geometric. It's mud. It's in geometric patterns, which I don't even know how I saw this thing. I just don't even know how I saw it. And the mud shape, it's shaped in like literally like triangles and stuff like that. How is that even possible in nature? I have no idea. And the other one is the next one up is like Badlands, but photographed in in like twilight, but they really are pink. So it's pink. And then the other one is the next one up is Badlands too. Looks like Neapolitan ice cream. So anyway, so there it is. You can see it. It's so fun. Can you tell? I love it. And it was so fun to play and then print. And actually, no one's purchased it. It's just totally fine. But I have it up on my website as a print for purchase.
Very good.
Because that's fun.
Awesome. And do you have the original available for purchase?
Yes. But someone has laid claim to it, I think. So
okay, good. So yeah, it's about the reproduction now. Good.
Yeah, and look, like you can do this too. Like, wouldn't it be fun to take? So I was also thinking, like, you can do this too. You don't have to like print your work and tear it up. You could take a bunch of you can take a bunch of like squares and make it into a 9x9, a 3x3, kind of like collage. You can figure out, like, I learned a lot of doing like how to print and prepare this for print in like Photoshop and make things I learned a lot about manipulating and moving my images by doing this. So this is just another thing where if you like don't let the technology stop you, it's all figure outable, and there are smart people that know how to do this, and that's why YouTube exists.
And that's definitely
right.
YouTube is amazing.
Yeah, it sure is.
YouTube University can take you a long way.
Right, but there are some things that like we sometimes just need to experiment with, and then there are other knowledgeable people that know this stuff. So,
and what I like to do, take what they've done, teach me the tool kind of a thing, and then just go crazy figuring it out how I want to use it. And that's what I did with my poster making, my digital paintings that I did last October, November. Kind of an idea is when I was really deep into it. And I spent a lot of time on YouTube seeing what others do and how they approach it. And then it was like, okay, enough. And just hours and 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 hours going like crazy with the stylus and the Wacom tablet and all that good stuff. And that's certainly what I would encourage others, anyone listening, to kind of treat it that way too, because it's definitely good to have that starting point, have that knowledge, but it's that process that makes it possible for you. How are you going to massage that process to work for you? You're the only one who can answer that question.
And really, you can take a little bit of a shortcut to getting the like, oh, this is how, but there's no substitute ever for just doing the work. And sometimes it's easy, and sometimes I have to tell you, sometimes I went in and I'm like, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm just going to like, this should be easy. And then it's not. And then there's some frustration and you walk away for a bit. So, doing this work is like not a straight line ever.
No. And like you mentioned before, I'm a creative kind of a thing. That just, I don't know if that's an excuse we want to use for being messy or doing whatever, but I'm like, okay, if that's what it takes, because to really let it sink in, however it is you want to, I guess I'm losing my train of thought here, but however it is you want to, or you're able to connect those dots. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to get at, is connecting the dots from learning something about yourself, learning something from someone else, and then how does it work for your work? In this case, with printing the collage, making the collage, I imagine let's revisit that process just a little bit. And what I want to hover about is the spark of the idea that said, what if? What if I did this? What if I did that?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that, to where you're just like, I'm going to try this. How did that go?
Well, for a long time, by the way, I just want to say one thing about being a creative. I think for everyone, being a creative looks totally different. I mean, a lot of us photographers, we like math. And we like things like we like technical stuff, right? That's why we use a digital
I do like
camera, right? And so, but me saying that I'm a creative is really just me giving myself permission not to do things in any way that seems like normal. so
okay.
Right? That's
I'll
just me.
that.
I'm like, I'm a creative. I give myself permission to do this in a way that doesn't make sense to anybody else but me. So I love it.
And that's okay.
Yeah, it totally is. It's great. So I've been thinking for a long time about a project, because I'm actually going to I'm going to apply for an artist in residency somewhere, and I've just been thinking about I had an idea spark for a project, but it was like really, really vague and had no idea what it had nothing to do with printing my images. But I was like, how can I do this? How can I do this? And having that idea, that's why I just want to say really quick, making a goal for me has been making goals in my photography has been really great, because it's pushed me to do things that I would have never done before. So thinking to myself, I'm going to apply for an artist in residency. What do I want to do? How could my work be different? Or even like, what is something fun and creative I could do? And then just like letting my mind chew, sometimes we have to let our minds chew on this. We don't come up with stuff right away. It takes
absolutely.
And sometimes we need to get input from external sources, like going on walks or looking through our back catalogs, right? And so because I know that going through my work and looking at it sparks ideas. It's just natural. It's just natural that as we do it and look at things and wonder, and the question, what if, it's just kind of natural that I think these things are going to come up. It doesn't happen like every time. Like I don't think I'm going to sit down and it's going to go, every time you have a brilliant idea, right? But as I knowing my mind, knowing that I was chewing on that, and then having the wonder and curiosity, all of a sudden those things collided. And as I was noticing the things I was drawn to, it just happened. And that's just kind of the way. But here's what I want to and here's what I want to say about it though. It can't really be forced, but you can put yourself in a situation where those things can happen for you. And so that's what we're talking about, is putting yourself in the situation where that stuff can happen for you. Like, what kind of connections are we making? Because if we don't go back and look, if I don't go back and look at my stuff and I just walk around thinking something brilliant is going to come to me, there is an amount of sitting down to do the work that we got to do so we can come up with this stuff. I mean, I only have one good idea a year, so.
All right. Well, capitalize on it and you'll be okay. When you say it just happens or it just happened, it almost makes it sound like the idea of tearing the sheet was fairly random. Would you describe that genesis as fairly random?
Okay. No, it's not. And so I want to say my former life, but it's not really true, because, what's that quote? It's from Ansel Adams, all of our past experiences and who we are and the places we've been.
All our baggage we carry with us.
Yeah. And it's good baggage, right? All of our experiences combine, and you bring with you to photography, all of those things. So yes. my creative outlet years and years ago was to make scrapbooks. I mean, I have kids. I have four.
Oh, nice.
I have 4 kids, right? So
Yeah,
I have
I do too. I know what that's like.
right, exactly. We're running around, but we also want to preserve the memories, and it was a creative outlet for me. I didn't just like stick the photographs in a little album and be done with it. I was like, let's make this cute. So I've done stamping and all the little crafty things you can imagine, like a mom of 4 kids doing. But there was a lot of, I loved doing the paper tearing. And so that was natural for me to go, what if I tear the paper here, And so, so that's when it's that kind of stuff where we have, that's why we bring all of our past with us.
That's right.
To create things, because there's no way I don't think I would have ever thought about tearing if I hadn't have been scrapbooking 15 years ago.
Yep.
Was it 15? Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So,
well, the thing I want, go ahead.
Well, that's kind of the catalyst, was like that. I remember looking at these images, and they just started floating around in my mind. And I just kind of took a few, I printed them, and I actually carried them around with me for a while. Like, how can I use these? Like, I printed them and then took them with me, and I would look,
wow.
I carried them on a trip with me somewhere. And actually, I carried them on a trip with me to Vegas, and I had an extra. I went to a conference. This is non-photography related, but I had an extra night. So I pre-planned to camp in Death Valley one night because it's super close.
Oh,
so I got a car, and I was like 24, not even 24 hours, and I brought those with me. Wouldn't it be fun to print your work and bring it with you to the location and go, okay, where's my inspiration? But it didn't come to me right away. Just took them with me so I could be in the place and absorb. So what I want to say is this was not all of a sudden. This was thinking about it and chewing on it, and really actually enjoying the process of coming up with an idea. And am I done with this? Probably not. Am I going to do more? Heck yeah, totally going to do more of this, because that is really fun. So I'm just saying, there's multiple things that we can do if we're maybe trying to come up with an idea, or we just sometimes need to let things percolate, and eventually we want to trust ourselves that we'll have those big fun ideas. Yeah, what were you going to say, Brent?
Yeah. So the thing I would not want a listener to have as a takeaway from this is basically any type of thought that says, oh, the only way, or not the only way, but the first way I should try, or the guaranteed success, or anything like that, is to rip up my prints like Bree did. It may work for them. Yeah. It may not. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to get to the core of your inspiration for this, because everyone has their own source of experiences that they can draw from. And that's going to be valid for them. Where if you were to talk with someone who had done a project in the same vein of what you're talking about, but you had completely different results, of course, you came up with the process that is valid for you and has meaning to you, and someone else is going to come up with a entirely different process. And I just want to say, absolutely come up with whatever that process is. And I personally would love to hear about it, but it's just something. I don't want people to think that we're saying this is your key to success. Your key to success is, I think what you said, Bree, was just kind of being open to it, just kind of, it just happened kind of a thing. And it's because of your previous life in scrapbooking that you ended up taking this route, as I guess we can call it.
And I love that you pointed that out, because for sure there was an amount of I did actually go online. I was like, what are other people doing? Because I was thinking, wouldn't it be fun to do a collage? What are other people doing? Because, sometimes we need a little help to like push us in a direction like, oh, that's possible. Oh, and then, so if you want to like print your stuff and tear it up and see, your stuff is I'm not even worried about it. You're never going to make something exactly like me. And it's not copying. Well, it is kind of copying, but it's a catalyst for inspiration. So yeah, absolutely. That is how we actually make authentic work, is we do see other people's stuff, and it is a catalyst for inspiration. That is actually how we come to, and when we see other people's work and then we take our own ideas and then we combine those, then we get this piece of art, like we get a baby. like a new piece of work baby, right? So there you go. So that's where it comes from, because we have all of our own ideas, and other people have great ideas too, but flat out copying doesn't quite work because it's not really us. We want to create work that's for us, that's ours. And so taking the inspiration, I'm going to take this inspiration and then go try and mess around with my own stuff and see what I can create. That's probably where you want to be, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. And certainly to look at this the other way is to say there's probably someone out there listening that's just like, mind blown. This is exactly what I've been looking for my entire life, and I'm going to do it. And they do amazing work with it. By all means, have at it. Like, this could be the catalyst for, that's the piece that I needed. And sometimes that happens for me too. Like, oh my goodness. So that's why we love having these kind of conversations, do you even say like inspire in your first little tagline? I mean, that's why we have these conversations, is to inspire other people, but also ourselves. Like, I'm like all excited. Mm-hmm. When can I do this again? Like, when can I go print my stuff and tear it up again? I need to buy more paper. Right. Yes. All right. Well, Bree, let's start to wrap a few things up. You wanted to tell us a little more, I think, about your coaching or some other stuff that you got going on. How long do you want me to talk? No, I'm just kidding. Listen, Brent, this was a really great conversation. I don't know if you can tell, but I get like energized when I talk about this kind of stuff. Absolutely. And I have like tons of energy. I also had some caffeine, so that helps too. But okay. Right. So, but this was really fun for me. So thanks for asking me to come on and join you. Yeah. I hope it's been a blast. I really do hope this was helpful for people. And, Brent, you'll put in the show notes how you can reach me, like if you have comments. But here's what I want to say about my coaching. I am doing a test group right now for a 6-week. It's like, I'm calling it Journey to Creative Confidence, and it's a 6-week group. And it's like, and for 6 weeks, we meet once a week, and I think a lot of us struggle with like self-doubt in our work. I mean, if we're creatives and we're artists, we struggle a lot with like, is my work good enough? What all of that. And we struggle sometimes with confidence. And so I'm putting together a 6-week, I'm calling it's Creative Confidence. It's a coaching group. So we do some learning and we do some chatting. We get to know each other, and there's some coaching involved. And I'm coaching by like mindset coaching. So I'll include the link. If I'm going to do a 6-week one starting in October. The first week of October goes till mid-November. And this is like, but I'll probably keep offering this. So if you are past this, but anyway, I'll send you the link and people can get on my waiting list if they're interested. I'm just going to put what it is. There's no like obligation to sign up for anything, but I'm really excited to offer this because I think so many of us struggle with this. So also there's a link to there's a link to my website if you want to find out more about like the coaching work I do. I'm on all the socials. I created a YouTube channel. All right. I just did all kinds of stuff, Brent. Is that crazy? Good. I feel like that's crazy. No, it's wonderful. I just started actually reading a book last night titled Creative Confidence. Send that to me. I want to I'd love to know, because I've done a lot of this work. I'm not taking someone else's stuff and, canning it. So this is all work that I've done on my own.
Sure.
I mean, I've pulled from all kinds of places, and I'm tailoring it specifically for creatives too. But it's, I want to read that book. I want to see what they say.
Yeah, it's by the brothers who founded or are founding members of IDEO, which is basically an industrial design type innovation company type thing. They were founded back in the 80s or whatever. But I just literally started, so I don't have any review. I don't have anything else with it to say. It's just I thought it was interesting. It was the same, or at least tangentially similar title, and I just figured that might be something that you'd be interested in as well. So
totally,
there's that.
Totally. Okay. If you like it, Brent, then include the link in the show notes. But if you don't like it,
all right.
If it's not,
by the time this gets published, I will have read more, and I'll be able to determine whether or not I like it.
Or you can put the title in there and they say thumbs up or thumbs down.
There you go. Perfect.
You be the judge.
Perfect.
I love it. Thanks.
All right. Well, let's head off onto our dose of inspiration. And Bree, you had mentioned you'd be willing to stick around for this part. This is something I typically do as myself as I round up and close out the show. But today's dose of inspiration comes from Hebrews 11, verse 1. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the convictions of things not seen. And this is from the English Standard Version. So this is something certainly I always recommend looking up the original reference for yourself to know in the context of what it was originally written. But the thing I really liked about this, Bree, was that last part, the convictions of things not seen. And this is what we've kind of been talking about. This is the kind of the idea of we need to process our images, in your case, tear up some images and make a new collection, a new collage, a new outlet for your imagery. And initially that's something that's not seen, and we're bringing life. We have faith that our creativity is something that is going to have some kind of meaningful commentary on the world, whether it's just meaningful to ourselves or possibly meaningful to someone else.
Yes, I agree with that. I think this is helpful on multiple levels. So even if the Bible isn't, I'm very religious as well, but even if the Bible isn't something that you're like, wait, don't I don't think we should dismiss this, right? Because this is talking about exactly this, so the self-confidence, because self-confidence is trust in your ability, to do things that you've never done before, and things that you've never seen yourself do. And so this I think is, this faith is trust. Faith and trust, I think, go hand in hand.
Very synonymous, sure.
As photographers, we want to trust ourselves that we'll be able to make the photos that we want, do all the things that we want to, and that all it can come from multiple places, including your relationship with God, but also our relationships with ourselves and the trust in ourselves that we believe that we can do those things. So that's faith in ourselves.
Absolutely. Beautiful. And then our other quote, Jean Baudrillard, he's a French philosopher. And the part that I'm pulling out from his larger quote is, reality found a way to mutate into an image. And Bree, I did not know you were actually going to pull out this collage and talk about that a little bit. But quite frankly, that's exactly what happened. Reality, those things, 7 images? That are 7. In that collage?
7.
So those 7 instances of reality have mutated into this overall image due to your input, your creativity, your process that you followed to do this. And I just thought that was, I don't know, it just worked out really well.
Conversation was meant to be.
Yes, I guess it was. Now the full quote is, it is perhaps not a surprise that photography developed as a technological medium in the industrial age, when reality started to disappear. It is even perhaps the disappearance of reality that triggered this technical form. Reality found a way to mutate into an image. And if anyone wants to dive deeper, I invite you to look up Jean Baudrillard. I'm not sure I'm capable of diving too much deeper than this, but I do like how he always causes a severe tickling in my gray matter, because he really bends your noodle. And sometimes I just enjoy that kind of a thing. And then it's like, okay, let's get back to what is reality. And then, of course, Jean Baudrillard would then question, what is reality?
Anything that's digital, right? Reality is all the things I'm personally experiencing right at this moment. So once we make an image of something or turn 7 images into something, it's not really reality. Like if photography is such an interesting medium, because we're literally we're taking something that exists in the real world and putting it into something either digital or flat, and then we're telling other people with how we edit it or whatever, what they need to be thinking about it. Right. So it really is, right. It really is such an interesting medium. And this is where I think our creativity comes into play, is because then we get to make all of the decisions about what we do with the reality. Do we want it to just be super, super hyper realistic? Like maybe there's no editing, right? Or do we want to turn things into crazy purple, whatever painted work that merely is just barely a reflection of reality? And that's the beautiful thing that I'm getting from this, is like, we have all of the choices, but it's all coming from something that's actually reality. And then we get to make it into what we want.
Absolutely. Sounds good. All right. So everybody, thank you so much for being here. Bree, thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Can't wait to do it again.
Very much fun. And as everyone is looking for a couple images to look at, I'll have a link in your app show notes for this podcast episode. You can click on that. You'll go over to the show notes website, or you can just click onto Facebook, search for the Great Outdoors Photography Podcast. If you're not a member of that group yet, you can certainly request to be a member. You need to answer a couple of questions. That just keeps out the people who aren't actually listeners. And so we just have a nice community of listeners there. And as you head on over to the website, there will be an option there. You can fill out the form if you want to get my checklist that I use for every scene. So it's called Making Photographs. And then as we look ahead to the future, I'm going to have an episode when I return from Alaska, with my fly-in camping experience that I'm doing here shortly. We'll talk about that. Bree is just like, yay. And you guys can't see her, but she's kind of sort of dancing a jig.
I'm whooping for your adventure. Woo!
Whooping for it. All right. Yes. And so I look forward to talking about that. And of course, the episode that I will be talking about processing fog images and just kind of what we're dealing with there, because there's so many different variations to be thinking about there. So thanks again, Bree. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. And until next time, God bless and happy shooting.